For the mid fight, generally you always want to have your soldier make sure he's whipping you to mid. Um, just that's something you always want to do. Usually you want your heavy on GRU so they can get there a little bit faster, and then just make sure your heavy's putting them away so they're not taking mini crits. Most teams will just roll out through main here, come up, and then roll out through this main choke point. Oftentimes that's kind of bad because this is generally the place where the demo's going to be spamming first. It's fine for your demo to go there because it'll be there about the same time as the other demo, but for the safest way to get to mid is just to run up like this and come out right here. Usually it'll be less open to spam and just classes rushing you. As heavy and medic, that's definitely a good option to go there. Usually you want to sort of split up your team between the sides you go, so you're not all clumped in one spot and just inviting the demo to hit your entire team with one sticky. Just making sure you're spreading out, going through the house. It's maybe a split second slower, but at the end of the day, getting it to mid with full health and making sure you're alive at mid is more important. Once you're at mid, generally heavy can throw out a sandwich. Med just needs to make sure their demo gets healed. Sometimes you'll try to call out where the sniper is immediately, and so if the sniper's cliff, then you know you should be playing on the left side of points so you won't get sniped as easily. Or if the sniper's on China or bottom left, then playing the right side of point is a safer option for you. But initially, once you get to mid, usually your team will have a plan if you want to go aggressive or be passive at mid. Some ideas for an aggressive mid that have worked for teams in the past is just to have your soldier bomb right across point at the start. Just get them to 300 and then have them bomb straight away. You can either go onto their cliff at the very start. That helps him avoid damage, and then he can just spam down on them. His main purpose is to do some damage, but it's mostly to cause a distract the heavy the demo, so the rest of your team, pretty much as soon as the soldier bombs, the rest of your team just wants to flood across the point and just get straight into their combo as fast as you can. This works well against teams who have good snipers, and you just want to make sure that you rush over the point and crush them before they have a chance to really get kills on you. It can work well just depending on your team. If you have a strong scout or a strong soldier or a strong demo who can really get out that early aggressive damage, then an aggressive mid could work well for you guys. But it's definitely just something worth trying and seeing if it works for your team. Another option for mid fights is playing more passive style, which most teams do. It's not very risky, and it's just sort of a default mid for most teams. Oftentimes you'll have the soldier sort of watching the side tunnel. The pyro can oftentimes support the soldier and the NG with sort of defending the side. If nothing's coming through and your team is ready to push across point, something that's very strong for the soldiers is to walk through the tunnel sort of right here and just spam right into their combo behind the rock. That's very, very strong. But the main goal of the flank is just to block the enemy soldier or pyro from rushing through the tunnel and pinching your team, as well as sort of shooting things as they come across point, because the big thing on mid is just making sure the other team doesn't really come across point for free and get damage, and just sort of overall in all situations on product or viaduct, making sure that your whole team is focused forward and doing damage to people who are pushing. That's a very important thing to keep in mind for mids, and then just in all other situations, just making sure people are getting out the damage and not letting the other team walk in. Milk for scout is pretty good on this map, but if you put your back against the wall and you just sort of aim at these trestles, I guess the angle's not quite there, but you can get it to land like directly on them, right behind point. I think you actually might just go up against the rock and throw it, but that's something that you can find out fairly easily. You can sort of sync that milk throw and then have your soldier bomb for the aggressive mid, but for the passive mid you have your flank set up on the right normally, and then your combo heavy will just sort of be sitting behind the rock, med around this area healing, just watching for spies and bombers. Depending on the team you're playing, if you know that they like to bomb their soldier, you can have your pyros stay with your combo more, It's very strong as well to have your pyro with your combo because they can reflex spam and just watch against bombers. And then the main heals is just on your demo and he'll be spamming forward. If you guys start getting picks, then it's definitely a good idea to walk across point. But in general, on a passive mid setup, you just want to make sure that you're heavy in your pyro and really your whole team is ready to absorb them as they get aggressive against you. Biggest things to keep in mind are soldiers bombing and then scouts or demos rushing across point. Just listening to what your demo causes damage on and then trying to focus fire that. And really, as all classes, be looking forward and ready to fight things as they come across. But in general, just being sort of spread out and looking forward, ready to fight what comes towards you, is the best way to deal with an aggressive mid from the enemy team, and just to set yourself up as a passive mid. A few options: if you know their sniper likes to go cliff, you can have your sniper come here and fight him immediately. If he gets the kill, then you guys can just walk across point. If you just send your soldier bombing behind and he picks the sniper, that's another perfect time to just walk across point. And something to be careful of is if you guys plan on doing an aggressive mid and have your demo go forward, you want to make sure your whole team is aware of that. Because otherwise it'll just be your demo walking it forward and he'll end up dying to their entire team. But overall, viaduct mids can be very different and a lot of different strategies can work. It's just making sure your whole team is ready to go forward if you're planning on being aggressive, and then your whole team is ready to be more defensive if you're planning to be a passive mid team. There's not really a distinction between which one's better. They both work well for different teams, so definitely try them out. For holding mid on viaducts or products, some main tips you want to think about is making sure that you don't bleed any players, because as long as you're keeping players alive, it's fairly straightforward to be holding point and not letting them recap. But as soon as you start bleeding players, that really allows them to get in and pressure you for the force or just for the recap. But overall, if you can focus on keeping players alive, most holds will work well for you. First, I'll talk about some aggressive holds that are really useful for if you need to hold them out for just a few seconds longer, or if you have good picks on them and you want to just move up and be aggressive. And then I'll talk about some passive holds. For starters, one of the main holds is just sort of playing on point. This is very good if you have big picks on their combo or if you have their sniper down. Especially when their sniper's dead, it's very good to just move your combo into point as well as your flank forward and just really deny them the ability to even get close to point. This also sort of pressures them and causes you to fight them, and so your spy will be able to pressure them and go for stabs while they're distracted. This is a common hold that works well for pretty much any team. You just want to make sure you're aggressively denying them the ability to walk in, but you're also not bleeding players. It's kind of risky for this hold because it's harder to keep your players alive, and so it takes a lot of coordination and just general awareness by every player that if you lose a player or two, you gotta back up and make sure you're holding more defensive. But in general, if you can kill their sniper, then holding on point is very, very strong. Another option is doing a forward hold. Most teams will have their combo on cliff, and their demo will be trapping on the left or spamming on the right, and then you'll have your heavy and oftentimes your pyro with your combo up here, and then your flank will be more focused on the right side. Most teams will have their demo and their flank fight people if they start pressuring from main, but in general, the way you lose this hold is if they just push out right to avoid your combo, and then your flank has to back up once they get pushed by a demo and a heavy and whatnot. And if that happens, the biggest thing to remember is for your combo to back out immediately, and so you don't get cut off as you're falling back. And then your flank needs to be ready for them to push out right with their combo, and they need to be prepared to just back out immediately and call that they're leaving. It's pretty risky to forward hold on this map, but if you have good DM and you're coordinated between your combo and your flank, it can be quite strong. just making sure you leave if you lose a player or two, or if they're just overwhelming one side. You just have to get back immediately so you don't lose your combo. But the most common hold that you'll see teams doing, and what teams have usually the most success with, is just sort of holding more passive on their side. Usually you'll see the sniper on the rock getting buffed quite a bit, and then you'll see the rest of the team just sort of floating around beside the sniper and the demo. Usually in this hold you want to have your soldier just sort of sitting up here so we can watch this side tunnel. It lets them bomb to point if they're pushing, and it also allows your soldier to really shut down this tunnel, because if your soldier's alive and in position to lock this spot down, then it makes holding very, very easy. You can have your pyro and your scout sort of rotating to the flank as well as your engineer, really to just sort of support your soldier and to shut down their flanking attempts, because keeping this sort of concrete area and this tunnel locked down are definitely the best way to make sure your hold stays. When you're holding passive, again, if you're really focused on keeping all your players alive and not bleeding people, that's very strong. Even if you're going in for like a kill, just having yourself alive so they see, oh, they're 9 up and you have your presence there, that'll discourage them from pushing. So I think just making sure everyone's alive is pretty underrated. Also, just making sure your sniper's protected from bombers and spies. One option, if your sniper and your demo are doing a good job of locking them out, is to have your heavy on cliff. You can spy check this right side fairly easily, but it does sort of expose you from spies decloaking in main, so having your pyro sort of more focused on watching in main as well as reflecting spam is usually the best option if your heavy's on cliff. Oftentimes with the heavy's cliff, you'll want your med directly below him here. It's a little harder to buff your sniper, but they can also rotate to this position and snipe, which is quite strong as well. Another option is to have your med sort of in this position with your heavy playing in front of him, watching for decloaks there and on China, and coming from cliff. It allows you to support your sniper more directly, and if your sniper is good, or if you just have a better sniper than their team, this hold sort of directly on top of your sniper can be very, very strong. It also is pretty much the same for your flank, just having your soldier up top and your flank sort of helping support him and watch for the tunnel push. Oftentimes what will happen is if your flank is more focused on the tunnel, their combo will be able to walk in pretty easily into you. So a big thing to focus on is making sure that, again, like on midfights, you have everyone looking forward and in position to be able to fight them as they push, because really denying them as they come in is one of the biggest keys to success on this map, as well as just keeping all your players alive. And unless you're going for like a big pick and you are fairly sure you'll be able to get it, just staying alive is usually the better option, because the way the respawns work on Koth, if you have the point, it'll take considerably longer for you to spawn than if you are trying to push the point. So overall, you just want to be fairly defensive with your eyes forward, ready to fight them. Your demo and your flank can be doing most of the sort of point denial, so your heavy and pyro can be focused on spies and people suiciding in. If you kill their med, just be extra defensive of your own med, because they'll likely be suiciding in. A pretty good option if their sniper's down is to have your heavy go on the rock, because you can really help deny point without taking much damage. But if the sniper's alive, this is a pretty risky spot. But overall, just being defensive in a place to spam is quite good. If the team you're playing isn't really pressuring the tunnel, or they simply just overwhelm you in the tunnel, one thing you can try is having your soldier jump up on top of this little ledge here while defending, and then spamming down towards the combo. He's in a pretty good spot to avoid damage, and it just sort of can catch teams off guard and get a little bit of extra damage out to slow down their push. Another thing for the soldier to think about is, like I said, if they're pushing, you can bomb onto point at the same time as your combo sort of commits to fighting, or if their flank ends up dying, the soldier can just sort of edge his way into the tunnel like mid and just spam their combo behind rock. That's a very strong thing to do. But that's pretty much it for holds. You just gotta focus on staying alive and making sure you're ready to fight them as they push. For pushing mid, there's a few different options that you can explore. Sort of the first thing to consider is how you're going to set yourself up for picks. Oftentimes, picks can let you get into the point and push for free, or just make it considerably easier. Oftentimes, if you guys have a good sniper, or if your sniper is considerably better, a good option is just sort of just slow down for a few seconds, buff your sniper, and let your sniper get a kill, and then that'll help you guys push in more easily. Another option is just try to walk in as a group slowly. Oftentimes you'll find a flank class or two that are overextending and dying to you guys, so that can help you guys push as well. Oftentimes pushing from this side, the sort of hill, or left side, as many people call it simply, is better because it's wider, it's easier to avoid spam, and you can sort of hug the wall to avoid snipers as well. But you just gotta watch out for spies who are looking and dropping down on you. But in general, just sort of buffing up your sniper, letting him go for a pick, can be pretty good to get an entry to let you push in. Another option is to run a suicide. Usually, what I've found the best way to do this is to sort of have your med buff up people and sort of partially come in, maybe to here only, making sure they're not peeking snipers and whatnot, but just have your team healthy and ready to push in, and all just sort of suicidally push in, and just everybody commit except for the pyro, usually is what I found to be best, and then just have your med and pyro back out to spawn. Oftentimes when you send that many players in, you'll be able to get the force, but a big thing to focus on is to make sure that you're having pretty much everybody go in at the same time, and there's not like a delay of like 1-2 people go in and then 3 more come in later. Just gotta make sure everyone's ready and everybody is going. But oftentimes just sort of dry pushing like that can be the best option, because if you're not really getting any picks and you just need to send in most of your team for a suicide force, then you're set up to back out and keep your med up. And then alternatively, if the push is just going well and your demo or your flank gets some kills, then your med's close enough where you guys can just sort of push in and take the point without needing to do a suicide wave. But just making sure that your pyro and your med are on the same page and ready to back out once the team is committing, that's a big thing to make sure your team understands. And then also having like your demo or your soldier or whoever's forward and able to see what's going on, just make the call, alright, we're suiciding, or no, we're gonna just commit to this push. That is another important factor. So dry pushing and going for a force are fairly similar in that respect. You can just sort of be passive as a med and ready to back out if your team wants to suicide. But for dry pushing in itself, usually you want to work your way up quickly. If they have Uber and you don't, usually you only want to push like that if you have big numbers advantage, or your med's already ready to back out. But for dry pushing on non-Uber versus non-Uber, you can buff up your sniper and go for a pick, or you can just sort of try to muscle your way forward and get yourself into a position to just sort of slowly fight your way and work on a point. One option you can try is having your heavy fist of steel and start getting cap time, or just have your scout try to get on point for a little bit. That's something that K&D does really well, is they just get cap time and they can steal the cap away right in front of you. And every time the point exchanges, just those few seconds of faster cap time really adds up over the course of a round. But in regards to dry pushing, you just want to make sure your med's in a position where they won't get picked. So just being sort of passive with the heavy and pyro as you're moving in, making sure everyone's aware of where the sniper is. Like I said, for midfights, just if the sniper's on cliff, you can play left side primarily. And then if the sniper's like China or bottom left, then you can just walk up the right side. But another option is for Uber pushes. If you have Uber and they don't, then it's best to just get your demo and your scout forward and ready to take in the Uber and try to kill their med. That's a big thing, in making sure their med dies if you have Uber advantage and you're pushing. One way to achieve that is just to demo scout Uber, and then another option is to bring your soldier in if you have a strong soldier, and they just flash them in to bomb their combo. Best way to make sure you actually get the med is by pushing quickly and not giving them much time to react, and then just making sure you have a scout and a demo in the Uber so you can chase with the scout. If it is sort of an even Uber push and both teams have Uber, the biggest thing to focus on is either forcing them before you have to use, or making sure you have either killed their sniper or you know where he is, and trying to get up pretty close before you actually end up popping. Oftentimes teams will sort of pop early, like way back here, and then spend 1, 2, 3 seconds coming forward before they're actually able to force the other team. And then if they have a pyro to air blast, then your entire Uber can be shut down, and then they can just Uber back into you. So making sure you guys get close before needing to use, and you try to make sure that the other team gets forced quickly. Another really important factor for successful pushes or holds is just to make sure if there's an Uber exchange, the rest of your team knows to come in the post Uber and just group up and frag. Just making sure everybody's ready to come in, kill the other team in the post Uber fight is very, very important. The post Uber fights on viaduct will really dictate whether you have a successful push or a successful hold. Having the pyro deny their Uber if you're holding is very, very important, and as well as having your pyro nearby as you're pushing to sort of protect your med. But in general, just making sure your team collapses onto point for the post Uber fight and they focus down targets will really help you be successful at pushing. If their team is mostly focused on bottom right, spam-wise, then just coming up through main quickly can be a decent option. Usually you only want your demo, med, and scout to come up through main, otherwise it'll just get sort of choked up and spammed too heavily. But just making sure that you guys are getting close before needing to use, and then forcing them effectively with your Ubers. Also, just in general, just having your pyro ready to deny them, and your whole team ready to collapse to point for a post-Uber fight. A big thing that can sort of help that is just making sure your soldier's getting arrowed and supported when he's holding this side. It's having the soldier deny this sort of choke point. Oftentimes you'll see the enemy soldier just walk through the tunnel and just be killed unawares by the soldier up top. And so just being in that position when holding or really pushing is pretty helpful. Then with the push you can just walk through and spam them there, or it can just bomb the point for the post-Uber fight. But hopefully these ideas on the mid-fights, holding and pushing have been helpful.